What a view!
This is incredible.
An Ontario County nonprofit.
Overlook Horizon high-altitude balloons.
3, 2, 1, launch.
Hey guys, good morning. Tori here from Overlook Horizon. I feel like we were just here just a couple of days ago for the launching of Boeing's Starliner, the CST-100 Starliner capsule. It was supposed to be a longer mission than this, but today the mission comes to a close. Hopefully, on a little more smooth note than the launching went of it, but we're here. We're live using the T- counter here today. We're not actually launching a rocket today, but I'm using the T- counter. That is time until landing, approximately. It's not down to the seconds, but should be, plus or minus a minute or so. But that's we've got about 40 minutes until the Starliner capsule touches down. They have given the go for deorbit burn. That actually came a whole lot earlier than it was supposed to. It was supposed to come up. They were supposed to do the go no go poll for landing burn at 7:13, so like 3 minutes ago. But they actually did it like 15 minutes ago. So I was going to cover that during the broadcast today, but they've already done it. So it's a good sign. We're go for the actual landing burn to happen. That landing burn will not happen until 7:20, so we're about 4 minutes away from when the landing burn will happen. And the actual landing is scheduled for 7:57 a.m. Eastern Time. It's 5:57 Mountain Time. That's the local time when they're going to be actually landing, and 12:57 UTC. So that's coming up in 40 minutes right there. That's our countdown to landing, approximately. So we're going to go through that and see it, hopefully see it come down. I'm hoping for similar views like we saw with SpaceX. We were a little bit disappointed in some of the footage that we didn't actually get during the actual launch. So hopefully it's a little bit better today. You can actually maybe see some telemetry, maybe see the incoming capsule as it's parachuting in. So that's what we're hoping for here today. So I'm going to switch over. I actually haven't yet. I've had the NASA stream up. So I'm going to switch over to the NASA TV stream so that we can actually listen in and see what's going on. I haven't listened to anything yet this morning. I just was paying attention to Twitter a little bit. So let's listen in. We'll see where we're at. They're kind of quiet right now. Is this me typing?
That NASA
it's not
was
me typing.
doing, space shuttle, probes around Jupiter, stuff like that.
All right, so they're just chatting it up. I guess I was looking for more updates, so I wanted to just check in and see when they come back to give a little bit of updates here. We're expecting that burn here in like 2 minutes here, so I want to make sure that we can listen in for what's happening. So if you missed the whole thing, let's rewind a little bit. I know most of you probably know what's going on. And we'll recap a lot of this, what they said during the press conference while we're waiting for landing and things like that, some of the details. But if you missed it, just to get you up to speed, the Boeing Starliner, the CST-100 capsule launched on Friday, just 2 days ago at 6:36 a.m. Eastern Time, was headed for the International Space Station. It launched on board a United Launch Alliance Atlas V rocket, which performed perfectly, launched it, dropped it off into a suborbital trajectory, which was intentional, that was planned. But then from there, the plan was the CST-100 Starliner was going to use its onboard OMAC thruster engines to circularize its orbit and get it into a stable, basically permanent orbit to meet up with the International Space Station. That did not happen. Had an issue with the onboard clock and timing system for the capsule, which was off and not at the correct point in the mission, caused some issues like the burn not to happen, some attitude control issues. They had some communication issues. All that said, by the time they figured it out and got it sorted out, it had used up too much fuel and they could not get to the International Space Station. So this, I think it was planned to be an 8-day mission, is now 2 days. So they did do a couple of tests yesterday. So a little bit of maneuvering, some testing of the docking ring system, kind of just extending it and retracting it just in the middle of space. But no actual
who was covering the
Now they're talking.
what we call the third
no
shift,
actual docking.
and also Mike Lammers, who was sitting with Richard Jones today. He's been kind of the weather flight director for both launch and landing. Also, at the flight control console, you've got a couple of Capcoms on shift with us. We have Tracy Caldwell Dyson and Josh Cassida. Josh is actually scheduled to.
All right, I'm gonna turn this down just a little bit. I'm gonna have it play just a little bit, so hopefully I can hear. Hopefully I can talk and listen at the same time. That's gonna be really hard.
Each of those teams spent about
yeah, Jason mentioned over on our YouTube channel that there may not be a ton to see because it is going to be dark, 5:57 a.m. local time for the landing, so it is going to be dark. I hope there's something that we can see. Jason did say that the recovery team has infrared equipment, so hopefully that means that that we're actually going to see a little bit of something during descent. That would be nice, but I have no idea what to expect, what we're going to see here. Let's see. Hope they don't miss Earth. Yeah, I don't think that's going to be possible. I'm pretty sure they're gonna make it to Earth at least. Whether they hit their target or not, that's an entirely different question. And I'll show you what the target is here shortly. I just want to wait for that deorbit burn to actually happen, unless we missed it already. Hopefully we didn't miss it already. It was scheduled for, yeah, they gave the go, if you can read the banner here at the bottom, they gave the go for deorbit burn at 6:55 a.m. It was like 15 minutes earlier than they were supposed to. Deorbit burn expected at 7:23 a.m. Okay, so we got 2 minutes here. Originally it was going to be 7:20, but I guess we're 7:23 is what we're going for. Fast Acker likes the snack table. I know I should have brought some snacks for myself here. All I got is I just got the coffee here, ready for landing. But we should be coming up in, I guess it's 1 minute now. So now it's 7:23, but the landing time is still 7:57.
Everyone quiet, working through their last steps to get ready for it.
So, sorry, I'm trying to. I said that whole talk and listen at the same time. I was waiting to hear that, but here we can turn this up so you guys can hear for at least a minute.
Re-entry begins. This is the point when Starliner's heat shield will face its biggest test. It's going to get up to 3,000 degrees, and the plasma will form around the spacecraft. The heat shield is going to provide a barrier to that. It's an ablative heat shield of Boeing's design, and that's going to protect Starliner and all of its systems.
That's a lot to protect it from. 3,000 degrees is almost 1,000 degrees hotter than lava. So it's got quite a job ahead of it. And all that takes place about 75 miles above Earth.
So we are about 1 minute 13 seconds away from the deorbit burn here. Watching, this will be Starliner's 33rd orbit of the Earth that this return is happening on.
So made it 33 orbits there. It's better than what we were thinking on Friday. We were thinking maybe it would make 1, maybe 2, and would have to come back. But luckily they were able to recover from some of those issues on Friday, get it into a higher stable orbit. Most important thing was really they wanted to make sure that they could land at the White Sands missile range so that they didn't have to have all sorts of... It's just so much easier to land at one of those planned and equipped
30 seconds to go
like
now
that.
until the deorbit burn begins. Again, it'll last about 55 seconds in all.
And White Sands missile range, that's where they were intending to land it, even if the mission had gone perfectly. That's where their intended landing zone was anyway, so the fact that they can land there today is still much, much better than if they had to go to
10
a contingency
seconds
site.
to deorbit burn. 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1.
0. There, it looks like they're on.
Deorbit burn in progress.
There you go. I'm watching the animation in the background there.
Good control reported.
There we go. All right, so that's good news. 4
OMAC thrusters firing for about 55 seconds to slow Starliner down to begin its return to Earth.
So this whole clock timer issue.
Good this far.
This whole clock timer issue that happened during launch, they said they've completely resolved it, but obviously there's, in the back of your mind, you got a little bit of concern, at least I do, about, when he comes down 3, 2, 1.
40 seconds in, about 15 more to go.
And you don't see any
Starliner,
thrusters.
we can
You're
see,
like,
is
"Whoa, we got a timing
maintaining its
issue here?"
attitude. Mac thrusters are firing. Smaller RCS thrusters are keeping the spacecraft in its position.
So I don't remember. Does anybody remember how long this burn was expected to last?
Good burn reported. Engines cut off.
There you go. There it is. Now it's
We
done.
are on our way to White Sands,
That
Richard
long.
Jones tells his team.
Starliner's ready to come home now. Next up, as we were just talking about, is the entry interface. That'll be coming up in about 16 minutes. But before that, Starliner does want to get rid of the service module so that the crew module can make its way home on its own. That clears the way for that heat shield and eventually the parachutes that will lower Starliner down slowly to Earth.
Yep. So we're looking good now. She's coming back to Earth
So
for sure.
Starliner is on a path coming home now. Its speed is dropping, and we will soon be jettisoning the service module as noted. But we are definitely on the way home to White Sands.
Moving into attitude to get rid of the service module now.
This is the whole recovery caravan here, waiting to race into position. Now this would be basically, I believe they're going to be simulating everything that they would do when an astronaut comes home, or our set of astronauts comes home.
And flight controllers report that we are in the right attitude and service module has jettisoned. Crew module is flying on its own. Service module will be disposed of while it re-enters over the Pacific. While the crew module continues on a flight path to White Sands, New Mexico, where our Boeing and NASA teams are waiting to recover.
Right now, it's up to the reaction control system on the crew module to flip the crew module back around, get its heat shield pointing into what will soon become a very hot spot. Make sure it's ready for reentry.
Yep, so 70 Time Waster asks, are they sure that they found the issue? Yep, so it was definitely a timing issue with the mission clock and the mission elapsed time. They actually resolved that on Friday. They fixed the problem. The main thing, they had to reset the timer and get it resynced, but the main thing was they wanted to make sure that it couldn't happen again. They were trying to figure out how it got off. They didn't know how they got it off. And I don't know if they've actually done a really great job of explaining how the mission elapsed timer got off. They did say that during handoff that Starliner needs to do a better job of reaching down to the Atlas V rocket to figure out where it is in the mission. I don't quite understand. I mean, I understand the terminology that they're saying. I guess, they've got the mission elapsed. Each capsule has its own, let's see, let me back up. Capsule has a mission elapsed timer to figure out what time of the mission is. The rocket has onboard computers as well that have mission elapsed time. And there's a handoff that happens there. So obviously the rocket...
At Starliner Mission Control in Houston, we continue to monitor the progress of Starliner as it flies back to White Sands.
I'm going to turn you down for a minute. So obviously there's a handoff that happens during launch. So at the early stages of launch, the rocket is doing all the work. That's what determines the actual liftoff, and they launch into space. And at some points, the rocket and the capsule separate, and the capsule needs to know what time the rocket actually launched so it knows where in the mission it is. And apparently it didn't do a great job of reaching down into the Atlas V computers to say, like, hey, where are we? And then setting its own internal clocks. So that's apparently what they need to do. That's what they said they need to do a better job of, is the Starliner basically taking its cues from the Atlas V and saying, all right, tell me where we are in the mission. The Atlas V would tell it where it is, and then they continue on. They said they've resolved it and that there shouldn't be any issues during entry, descent, and landing here, but obviously still concern that's in the back of probably everybody's mind. And they seem pretty confident about it, but this is a critical moment.
And another Starliner engineer joining us this morning is Tori Wills Pedrati.
I'm going to turn the engineer down here just so I can chat for a minute. But this is a very critical moment of the flight. So they talked about in the press conference how the International Space Station and the docking portion was obviously a big portion of this mission, but not entirely required as a prerequisite before they can fly crew. So they could potentially, as long as they know environmental control systems are working, computer systems are relatively working with the exception of this issue, and they can identify the root cause of this issue. They know that crew can manually take control, and that the docking systems were working. They survived launch. They would extend and retract, and their maneuvering systems were all working, and all those systems were working. Then they could potentially feel safe enough to launch crew on the next flight without having to redo this flight. So they may launch crew, and the first time that they actually dock to the International Space Station with Starliner will be with crew. So that the actual docking was not a requirement of the commercial crew program. An uncrewed docking was not a requirement. But one thing that is a requirement is that the capsule can come back and land safely. Obviously, that's a big requirement. So this is a very, very critical part of this mission. It's got to be able to re-enter. We're already in the deorbit and starting to hit entry interface here. It's got to be able to re-enter, survive re-entry, deploy all of its parachutes, and land safely on target in the White Sands missile range. So this is much more critical than the actual docking. Obviously, the docking is very important, but for this mission in particular, this is very critical. I mean, this uncrewed demonstration mission, the biggest portion, at least in my opinion, is it can launch, it can survive, the crew would survive the launch, crew could survive in space, all the systems are there, the crew could get themselves home and land safely, and then you could potentially launch crew on board. So as long as you know that the crew would be safe from launch to some sort of landing, then you're in good shape. And then what actually happens during the mission, like the actual docking portion, that could potentially be done with crew on board. Because even if let's say you do a crewed mission and something goes wrong with docking where they can't dock, the crew could eventually abort the mission and still come home, and we'd have this same scenario. They'd be up there, they could survive, they could turn around, they could come home, they could land safely. So crew would be okay. So anyways, this is going to be a critical portion here. Let's see what everybody is saying here. Jason says, still pretty amazing to me to think they can quickly recalculate the entire orbital path and all the timings to get it to land on target after missing the correct orbit. I also think that is amazing as well. If anybody's played Kerbal Space Program, that is not an easy thing to do. So I'm sure they have computer systems that will do that quickly for them, but it is pretty amazing knowing the amount of math and calculations that are going into that. Let's see. You do know that streaming and others is okay. Thanks, Home Slice. Reading Twitter that the mission elapsed time was turned on too early. Starliner starts its mission elapsed timer at launch, whereas a normal payload starts its mission elapsed timer at separation. Yes, I did read something along the lines of there. I wasn't entirely clear on where the mission elapsed timer starts. So. A lot of satellite payloads start their, like Gregorius said, start their mission elapsed time at separation. When they separate from the rocket, they start at 0, and Starliner starts its mission elapsed timer 0 on Starliner's capsule is at launch, versus on like a satellite, 0 would be at separation. And that's mostly because of the abort scenarios. Like Starliner needs to know that it's in flight and part of its mission, and it's underway. Like mission has started at launch because they may have to potentially abort. Versus a satellite or regular payload doesn't need to do that. There's no abort scenario for a satellite. So the mission for a satellite doesn't start until it actually separates from the spacecraft. And if it doesn't separate, mission never starts. Let's see. Lack of TDRS signal was unfortunate, but I'm wondering if they can pull TOD updates, time of day updates. Is that from multi-tier GLONASS satellites? Yeah. So the TDRS satellites, or the communication satellites they were using to communicate with the capsule. Originally in the press conference, they said that the issue with communication was due to them being in between satellites. From what I heard from the press conference yesterday, the teleconference yesterday, is that that's not actually the case or what they think anymore. They think that actually because the mission elapsed timer was incorrect, it got itself in the wrong attitude and pointed the wrong direction, and that's what caused some of the communication issues. Is basically it wasn't pointed in the right direction to actually do the communication with the TDRS satellites. So that was some of the concerns, as people were like, well, how do you lose communication with this capsule? But it sounds like because it was oriented in the wrong direction, which was part of the issue on Friday, as it was pointed the wrong way, because it was pointed the wrong way, they couldn't communicate with it. So their antennas or communication antennas were out of ideal sync or communication path with the TDRS satellites. So that was some of the issue that they had with recovery. They actually identified the issue on Friday pretty early, but they couldn't correct it because they kept sending commands to the spacecraft saying, hey, get your orbital insertion burn started, and they couldn't get it started because they couldn't communicate with it. And that's where potentially having crew on board, they might have, it's not 100% certainty, but they might have been able to save this entire mission if there were crew on board. One thing that is a requirement for the commercial crew program is that the crew can manually intervene at any point and fly this thing manually. So they can shut off, pretty much Starliner and Crew Dragon for SpaceX do everything autonomously. But one of the requirements was that they all had to be able to cut off that automation and let crew take control at any time. So had crew been on board for Starliner, in theory, they could have stopped the automation, said, hey, okay, you're wrong, we're taking over, and then either reprogrammed the orbital insertion burn and told it to happen at a different time on the mission elapsed timer to sync up with what the timer actually was. They could have reset the mission elapsed timer to get it to the correct time. They could manually do the burn. They could just fly and do the burn manually. That's kind of the last option. They don't usually want to do burns manually, but they could. They have that capability. And last thing is they could always do an entire abort scenario, even if they were out of communication for some reason with NASA. They can fly the thing right there. They train for abort scenarios, and they could, even if they're not communicating with anybody on the ground, they can say, all right, we're on our own here. We're taking control. So that's something that could have possibly been done there. Darren has a bad feeling of this. You think we'll get any video from Starliner? Lack of vehicle video at launch was disappointing compared to space. Yeah, it was definitely disappointing that we had not that much video. I'm already happier with the video that we're getting now. Like, just to be able to see this telemetry, I wish they would show us this a little closer so we could see this telemetry here. This would be interesting to see. I don't know why they don't just show us this on the broadcast, but yeah, that's, at least we can see it from a distance here, like this. Or even if they don't want to show us, maybe this sort of information here is proprietary up here or top secret, but like, just show us this little animation here. That would be kind of cool. Or show us a cropped in version. If I don't know what this, I think this is just a clock right here, it looks like, but you just show us a cropped in version just so we can see what's happening. I don't know why they don't show more here. It is kind of frustrating. But I don't know what we're going to be able to see. I'd like to think that we'd see more, but it is going to be dark. Don't forget, it's going to be pitch black when it lands. So hopefully we have some infrared views. That would be nice. I've heard they have infrared available at the landing site, so we'll see. Let's see. Coffee music is about 30 minutes away from White Sands. I wonder if I could see it from here. I bet you could, Coffee. You might actually see it now. You might want to look now to see if you can see the entry interface, because you may see the heating of re-entry. That might be over now. I haven't really been listening in. We'll turn that up in just a minute here. That would probably, for coffee music, that would be my biggest thing that you probably would see is the entry interface. I don't know if you'll actually see the capsule just because it's dark. I don't know if we'll see the capsule because it's dark. All that in the time before it re-entered because it was suborbital at that time. I think you're talking about the crew taking control stuff. So the suborbital re-entry is about minimum is about 25 minutes. So if something went wrong during launch and they couldn't fire the thrusters, the capsule would re-enter 25 minutes after launch. So they have about 25 minutes total to react to this. Realistically, it's probably more like 10 minutes that they have to react to some sort of problem. Let's see. Thanks, Chad. Appreciate the kind words. Chad's my buddy from the NASA social we went to. That was CRS 17. We were down there together in Florida to watch a SpaceX launch in person. Let's see. All right, let's turn this back up here. All right, there's nothing happening, so kind of quiet, but we're going to try to turn it up so we can hear, because we're getting a little bit close. We're 16 minutes. You got my T-minus count. That's my T-minus countdown, because they haven't given us an official countdown, but that's when landing is expected, at least when I expect it. It's in about 16 minutes here. That's plus or minus a minute or so it's not exact to the second. Just keep that in mind. Let's see. Mark says, Mark on Facebook, I'm not sure the idea of overriding manually an automated system reset. An automated system, I'm assuming that means rests, easy with me. I think the 737 MAX is an example of what can go wrong with regard to taking control of your aircraft. Well, if you think about it, I don't want to get too far into the whole 737 MAX, but my understanding, a lot of the issues with the 737 MAX was actually that the automated system was fighting against the human pilots. The human pilots actually knew what to do to solve the problem of the 737 MAX. They just didn't know how to shut off the automated system to be like, stop doing this, let us fly the plane.
And at Starliner Mission Control in Houston, we are 40 seconds. We are 40 seconds away from entry interface, now 34 seconds. Starliner continues in the proper attitude. Altitude 127,000 feet, 127,000 meters. Apologies, 126,000 meters.
And we are right on top of that entry interface. This is when Starliner would be seeing those 3,000 degrees Fahrenheit temperatures. Should be just about 75 miles above the Earth at this point. We did want to make sure, as people are tuning in, that they are aware that following Starliner's touchdown, we will be hosting a post-landing news conference here on NASA TV at 9 a.m. Central Time. That's going to feature Jim Bridenstine, the NASA administrator, Jim Tilton from Boeing, and Steve Stitch from our commercial crew program.
So hopefully we get a little more info at that press conference there. I don't know. I don't think I'll stay live quite that long for that. So I guess it depends on what happens here. I didn't expect to be as live as long as I did on Friday, but obviously that lasted a little bit longer. Let's see. Is Boeing in competition with Elon Musk? I would say yes. In a short answer, yes. Boeing is in competition with SpaceX, which is Elon Musk's company. So yes, they're in competition. With that being said, NASA is, there was some confusion with some people I was talking to over the last couple of days.
And Starliner is a minute into entry interface, into that phase of maximum heating during this re-entry back over the Pacific. Starliner is flying as a crew module alone. The service module has been jettisoned and disposed of.
Yeah, and here's the most frustrating thing. I'm going to get back to the Elon Musk question, but at this point, like now we're having...
Altitude 104,000 meters.
Okay, turn this down just a touch. Here's my frustration with these Boeing broadcasts. Now we got things happening, like entry interface. This is getting kind of important. Why are we looking at people that are staring at computer screens that we can't see? I don't understand that. I don't want to look at people looking at computers. I want to look at stuff happening. Like, all right, this is better at least. This has got us something here. At least we can see like altitude in the top corner there. I assume that's altitude, although it's not. It's going up, which is, well, that could be normal. That could be normal. It doesn't, sometimes, I don't know what the entry profile is for Starliner, but sometimes during entry, Space Shuttle did this. They enter in and then they kind of glide up a little bit and then continue back down. So they can kind of do this little bit of a wave during entry. So that could be normal if it's going up. But this is the view that frustrates me. This gives me nothing. This is of no value to me. Staring at this, like occasionally, like maybe SpaceX shows this sometimes when a big event happens, you know, when they land the Falcon 9 booster, and then the entire mission control team is like, yeah, and you can see the mission control team and clapping and hugging and everything. All right, so that's exciting. But this right now, just looking at people with their arms folded, staring at computer screens, this is of no use to me. Like, show me something meaningful. This is frustrating. Okay, anyways, so there we go. Here's my annoyance. What were we talking about before that? Let me turn the volume back up.
Not adequately communicate with the overhead satellites.
Currently 51 miles above the Earth, still heading in, making its way through that entry interface, about 3 minutes into it at this point. The next milestone we'll be looking for is the forward heat shield jettison. That should be coming up in less than 10 minutes now.
Controllers report good attitude, good roll to the to position it needs to be in.
All right, so that's good. I mean, I guess we're hearing what's happening.
Starliner at 75,000 meters.
So we started talking about if SpaceX and Boeing are in competition. So short answer, yes, they are in competition. But I would say, because there was some confusion about this with some people I talked to, NASA intends to always have 2 commercial providers available to launch astronauts to the International Space Station. So they want to have 2 providers no matter what happens. This is not like a competition where only
Starliner
one...
moving through Earth's atmosphere, going through the entry phase. 11 minutes, 30 seconds.
Okay, turn you down. All right, so this is not a competition where there's going to be a winner at the end, where only one of these providers will be the one to launch astronauts. No, there will always be 2 providers. They want to make sure that if there was some sort of anomaly that happened, then there wouldn't be a long delay during an investigation before they could send crew back to the International Space Station. So let's say something happens with Starliner, they got to do a months-long investigation. In the meantime, they could use SpaceX's Crew Dragon to still get crew up to the International Space Station, and vice versa. So they will always make sure that there's 2 providers available. And if for some reason one of these providers dropped out, NASA would seek a second provider to have that. So yes, they're in competition, but there's not a winner at the end of this. So they're more in competition for like who's going to get more money, who's going to get more missions versus the other, who can do it cheaper, faster, better, all that kind of stuff. So that's kind of that's the competition. And then of course, a lot of this will lend to, you know, SpaceX's success to be able to do this would lend to more satellite missions, more maybe private crew missions. Who knows what could happen with that? The more it becomes more reliable and routine, the better.
Forward heat shield jettison, the first of the heat shields that will be jettisoned. In the meantime, we've got 10 minutes until landing, and the Starliner will be heading in the next few minutes over the Baja Peninsula, part of Mexico, and then into New Mexico in the White Sands Space Harbor.
And we have confirmation that the on-site vehicle at White Sands, the tracking vehicle, is tracking Starliner right now. Systems are looking good.
Okay, so Mark asks a good question. Mark on our YouTube channel, he says, what would you like them to show? There's really not much to see at this point. I'll tell you what I would like them to show, because we've already done this once with SpaceX's Crew Dragon capsule. They showed us telemetry so that we could see what was happening. What's the altitude? I can't see the altitude. I have no idea what altitude we're at. I don't know. I don't even have a clock. I mean, you have my T-minus clock in the top right. That's my clock. They don't have. There's no clock on their timeline. I don't know if we're on time. I don't even know if that's correct. That's just a guess right now. Telemetry.
That Starliner is on track.
They just said that the tracking ship had visual of the capsule. We don't see that. We saw that on SpaceX. We saw that on the Crew Dragon re-entry. They actually showed us the recovery ship. They showed us video from the recovery ship tracking it in. We saw the entire re-entry interface. We saw the plasma trail from the tracking ship. So we saw all that stuff on video during the SpaceX Crew Dragon capsule. So to Mark's point, he says there's not much to see at this point. I disagree. I think there's lots to see. They're just not showing it to us. So there's my continued rant. I'm probably going to keep ranting because they keep showing us just these computer monitors. Hey, there we go. All right, now we're getting somewhere.
Getting our first views.
We are getting our first views from the NASA WB-57. We see their Starliner continuing its plunge through the atmosphere. We are 8 minutes and 8 seconds from landing.
So
that image is infrared because of it being, of course, over the sky.
I'm going to turn this down again too, because Jennifer said, Tori, the difference is that is SpaceX, this is NASA. It's actually not the difference, because Crew Dragon Capsule is on the same. Crew Dragon Capsule is the same commercial crew program that we're watching today. So SpaceX is operating Crew Dragon for NASA. When we restreamed that earlier, we were watching the NASA TV stream. That was back in February. So that was the same. The Crew Dragon mission, the DM-1 mission, was exactly the same mission that we're watching today. Same criteria, same operations. It was just a different private company. I mean, it was SpaceX operating it, but it was operating for NASA. All right, so we got a little bit quiet there. Oh.
Great view here. Can't see much since it's dark, but it's good to know that Starliner is on its way home, and this is actually a little better than I was hoping, considering that it's in the middle of the night in New Mexico.
Very good to see this. Very good to see this. Everything is looking. That image is exactly what we expect. The thermal protection system on Starliner, of course, protecting the spacecraft from the heat of entry. Slowing speed down, now Mach 3.5. Of course, orbital velocity is Mach 25, so that gives you an idea of the velocity change.
Now 17 miles above New Mexico.
Yeah, now this is much better. I'm much happier with this view. At least now, now we can see the ship coming in. We've got some telemetry information. We've got you've got altitude there. This is 12,200.
6 minutes to landing at White Sands, New Mexico. Starliner remains its proper attitude, proper course.
12,200 above
Mach
sea level
1.1
is what I was going to say
19,000 meters.
And we've got, what else do we have there? Looks like we've got some positioning stuff. So not a ton of telemetry there, but this is much better here. Positioning, altitude, I'll take that for sure. And then a picture, of course, is fantastic. Even just this picture of the white dot there, that's kind of cool. Let's see. Wonder what the high-res downlink looks like. Oh yeah, I know. We've got the
landing recovery team has visual on Starliner as it comes down.
Yeah, I don't know why it says low-res downlink there. That could be just the fact that landing out in the White Sands missile range. Maybe they're not able to get a strong downlink from the aircraft.
It's about 6.2 miles still above New Mexico, but we did just
forward heat shield deploy.
Confirmation of that forward heat shield deploy. Everything.
Drogues out.
Things will happen fast now.
That's good.
The drogues will start stabilizing the Starliner and slowing it down before the main heat shields deploy after it.
All right, I'm going to get
main parachutes, rather, not heat shield.
There you go. You can see the drogues a little bit on
camera. Vehicle is slowing rapidly. Mach 0.2.
A little choppy, a little grainy, but you can see the drogues there. That's good news. The question is, will we get all three parachutes?
And landing site reports the sonic booms as Starliner came over.
So we should see the mains come out here shortly.
And we can see on that image the two pilot chutes, the two drogue chutes.
Now, this is where the Starliner had an issue during their pad abort test, is when they went from drogues to their mains, the riser chutes that are in between the drogues and the mains that actually pull the parachutes out.
3 minutes, 30 seconds from landing.
One of them had a bad connection.
Mains deployed.
There we go. There's our mains. And I saw the 3 risers, and looks like we got 3 chutes. That's good. All right. I think we got 3 chutes there. Yeah, there you go.
And we see 3 main chutes. 3 main chutes.
There you go. You can see them
billowing up. We have
on their way down.
3 main
Good
chutes.
sign.
You see the red, white, and blue as Starliner descends. 2 minutes, 53 seconds from touchdown.
Now that was...
And the rotation handle has deployed. That will level Starliner as it descends. Base heat shield has jettisoned. That is the base heat shield falling away as planned. Airbags are inflating.
And that is the last of the milestones. So now all that's left is for Starliner to float down to the surface of the desert in New Mexico. Everything continuing to look good on this camera that we're getting from the WB-57 cameras, infrared cameras, giving us as good a view as we could expect at nighttime.
2 minutes, 12 seconds to landing. Starliner descending under 3 good main chutes.
Yeah, and one of the big differences between SpaceX and Starliner's capsules is Starliner's landing on land, not in the ocean. SpaceX lands in the ocean, so this is where they've got airbags on the bottom of the capsule. We can't really see them because it's nighttime, but they've got airbags on the bottom of the capsule that should be inflated now, actually, and that will help it softly touch down with the help of the parachutes.
All 6 airbags are confirmed to have deployed, and they are fully inflated as Starliner descends to the desert down in White Sands.
Just about 800 meters left to go. It's less than half a mile.
And this will be really exciting to see.
Great imagery there of it
during the daytime.
descending.
During the daytime, this will be really exciting to see. You see the red, white, and blue parachutes. You'll see the capsule coming down. You just have to imagine it for now because it's pitch black there. It's 5 o'clock in the morning at the White Sands missile range, almost 6 o'clock in the morning, 5:57. But we should be landing within seconds here.
Less than 1 minute to landing, less than 1 minute to touchdown at White Sands, New Mexico. Starliner floating smoothly and softly under 3 main parachutes.
And don't forget, we also have on board Rosie, the anthropomorphic test dummy, or test device, whichever you prefer, that is on board. And Boeing said that they will have, the recovery crew will have cameras to show us Rosie.
Just 300 meters left to go. That's 984 feet. Very close now.
Yeah, so they said that they'll be able to show us Rosie.
20 seconds. 20 seconds to landing the first Starliner flight test vehicle.
So here we go. We're coming in. Oh, there you go. You can see the mountains. This looks good. This looks like we're going to have a... Looks like it could potentially be a successful landing here, I think. Hard to tell where the actual ground is. It seems like it keeps... Oh, there you go. There's landing.
And Starliner touches down in the desert in New Mexico. An historic landing in White Sands, New Mexico concludes the first flight test of Boeing's Starliner spacecraft. The first time an American-made, human-rated capsule has landed on land.
That took place right at 6:58 a.m. Central Time, 2 days, 1 hour, and 21 minutes into Starliner's mission. Congratulations, Starliner.
Congratulations, indeed. Flawless flight back to Earth. Good landing this morning. Now the spotlight's going to shift a little bit to the landing recovery team waiting for it out there in New Mexico. They have to wait for clearance before they start heading over to the vehicle, but Starliner has touched down at White Sands successfully this morning. Main chutes are jettisoned.
That'll keep those chutes from pulling Starliner away as the landing recovery team is looking to make their way toward it.
So yeah, now the recovery team will be off to the races to get out there to Rosie, which would potentially be
once again today's
real crew.
Was, 6:58 a.m. Central Time.
Hopefully on the next flight.
Mountain Time.
Have to see what what NASA has to say about what tests they were able to perform, but from the press conference, it seemed like they may just go right to crewed flights after this. So I wouldn't be surprised if they go right to crewed flights. You can see the recovery vehicles on their way out. And yeah, so the nice thing is, the anthropomorphic test dummy Rosie has launched to space and come back, and this would have been a safe mission for the astronauts. It's most important here.
Steve, it was a beautiful landing from here. We had a spotlight on the ground. We could actually see some of those ordnance fires up in the upper atmosphere when that forward heat shield was deploying. We could see the strobing light on the vehicle all the way down, and then when those parachutes deployed in the spotlight, it looked almost ghostly as it drifted down and touched down at 5:58 here. As you can see, we are moving in the convoy right now. We've got our H2, which is actually the connection that I'm talking to you guys back from right now, right in front of us. Our recovery operations leader, we call him Roll. He's in contact with the recovery operations coordinator. That's rock and roll for you. They are leading us out to the crew module. I can actually see it strobing out in the distance on the horizon. We have the GPS coordinates locked in. That strobe is still going on, so we're just going to follow that all the way into the crew module. And then once again, Gold Team will be the first to approach the vehicle. We heard the radio call that there's no hazardous conditions for the LRT. That's the landing and recovery team. But we still want to make sure that everything is safe before the teams get around the vehicle. So again, Gold Team is going to approach the vehicle, sniff out, make sure there's no residual hydrazine on the outside or there's no propellant leaks. Silver Team is going to go in and discharge the vehicle, and then Green Team is going to go in and start getting that environmental closure around the vehicle and get some ground heating to it because it's so cold. We want to make sure those propellant lines don't freeze. And then the red team moves in, gets access to the hatch, and then I think we'll probably wrap up this broadcast right around hatch closure. When there's crew members in there, obviously we'll stick around until everybody's out, but today getting that hatch open and getting access to the interior is really the final big milestone for the landing and recovery team. Over to our east, we're starting to see the sun come up, so hopefully we'll have a little better lighting for you as we get into these operations, but just a great feeling out here, hearing crew module touchdown on the radios just gave everyone here chills. There's a lot of cheers. Very happy team, and they're ready to rock. So back to you guys, Steve.
Thank you, Josh. So great to hear that. Richard Jones, flight director here at Mission Control, said that looks like it's going to be a smooth ride for CFT, judging by how softly and smoothly this OFT vehicle, this Orbital Flight Test vehicle, came down this morning.
I'm sure the astronauts on their way to see it will get their assessments as well. Hopefully, be just as enthusiastic as that. I know they're excited to be there. Just a reminder, we've got a lot of work left for this team here in the room, but in just a little while we will be going to a post-landing news conference. That's going to be at 9 a.m. Central Time. So we've still got a couple of hours to follow along with Starliner activities here on the ground. But we will be hearing from Jim Bridenstine, Jim Chilton, and Steve Stitch at that time. Again, 9 a.m. Central.
And also the landing team there in New Mexico, there in White Sands, reports that, quote, we hit the bullseye. So Starliner came down exactly where it was supposed to, right at White Sands, right where it needed to be. It was a spectacular entry this morning, and of course, remarkable images coming down as it. We're also getting our first look through the darkness at the Starliner capsule as it sits on the desert floor there in White Sands. This picture is from our landing recovery team as they move out towards the spacecraft.
Yeah, and so I believe all three astronauts that are scheduled for the crewed flight test, which is CFT, that'll be hopefully next for Starliner. I believe all three of them are on site at the White Sands Missile Range, probably going with the recovery team to go actually see the capsule itself. At least that's what I'd want to do. But who knows? They all got important jobs. But I'm pretty sure that they're there and probably likely part of the recovery team. So some people asking what the white lights were. Those are strobe lights, just locator lights for the recovery team. Some people ask why we're black and white. It's black and white because it's the middle of the night still. It's only 6 o'clock in the morning, the White Sands missile range, so it's pitch black there. So really the only way we could see it is through infrared lights. So they did say, Sailor Man said, hit the bullseye, did you? Not exactly. Well, for the landing, they hit the bullseye. At least that's what they said. I don't know how big their bullseye is, because the White Sands missile range is pretty huge. It's like 100 miles just north to south for the White Sands missile range. So there's a big area they can land in. I imagine they probably wanted to land next to the NASA test facilities. So I'm guessing that somewhere close to there is their bullseye. They didn't exactly say where in the White Sands missile range that they were landing, so it's tough to say exactly. But Columbia, that's Dan over on Periscope, says they must verify that no hydrogen gas is present first. Yes. Team effort's great. Yeah, they've got a lot of hydrazine fuels, particularly that's what their abort system and their onboard thrusters there use is hydrazine gas, which is very, very toxic, and they want to make sure that there's no residual hydrazine gas that's around. They want to make sure the capsule itself has its own onboard thrusters as well. This must be a replay here. But the thrusters themselves also, there could be some residual hydrazine from there. The capsule has thrusters as well, so they want to make sure that they don't have residual hydrazine, and they did mention that they want to make sure that they get ground heaters. I don't know what the temperature is there, but they wanted to make sure that the propellant lines don't freeze. So I'm curious what the actual temperature is. That was one thing that was not on my radar to even look up what the temperature is at the White Sands missile range. So let's see. Let's go back to a couple comments here, see what everybody's saying. I missed a whole bunch for a while. Rosie made it home. Congratulations, says Greg. Yeah, hopefully we get to see a view of Rosie here once they verify the capsule is safe and they get the hatch open. That'd be great to get a view of Rosie in there. Greg's concerned about parachutes. Took a long time to be jettisoned in a wind that would have dragged the capsule on the ground. It's definitely a concern. But I think they want to try to jettison those as quickly as possible. It was tough for me to actually see exactly when they were jettisoned. So they might have been jettisoned earlier than they announced, but I also wasn't really looking that closely at that. Let's see. We can get HD live coverage from the recovery truck, but low def of console ops. Let's see. Yep, still nighttime. What else did we miss? As they get closer to the spacecraft, coming a little bit later. We are talking right now with Boeing's Tory Wills Padron. Let's see. Probably engineers in the Starliner systems. -140. Now, what is this parachute? So there's like three parachutes. Three types of parachutes that you'll see. You'll see the drogue. There's two drogue chutes that come out. They slightly slow the craft down. They also make sure that it stays oriented in the correct direction as it's coming through the atmosphere. So those are the first two that come out. Then there are three riser chutes. Those are really small that are connected to the mains. Those three riser chutes basically pull the mains out of their storage casing. So there's three riser chutes that pull those out. Those disconnect really quickly, and then you have your three main parachutes. So there's drogues, the risers briefly, and then the mains. Dan lives 5 minutes from the White Sands missile range and just got to see my first re-entry. It's cool seeing the fire trail and hearing the sonic boom. Dan, that is awesome. That is pretty cool. I wish I could see that. That is really, really cool that you can see that. And that's one of the big benefits for for this actually landing on land is that recovery and re-entry and everything is so close to population. You know, it's not out in the middle of the ocean. There's some people that actually have the capability to see that. I mean, obviously we had that during the space shuttle days. People could see the space shuttle come back and land on the runways, but yeah, we didn't see that for Gemini or Apollo or Mercury or even SpaceX's Crew Dragon, but yeah, a lot of people will get to see it for this. Now, SpaceX's Crew Dragon, one thing to note for them is that they landed pretty far offshore. They were actually planning to pull that in when they actually do crewed flight. They did it farther offshore for the test flight, the DM-1 flight, just in the event that something went wrong. They wanted to make sure they had a big margin of error. But as everything went right, I believe on their next crewed mission, or at least at some point during crewed missions, they're going to bring that in closer to shore. So you might still see it. I don't know how close to shore. Probably not 5 miles close to shore. That's pretty close. But they were going to pull it in a little bit closer to shore. So maybe people might see the re-entry a little bit. Is that a car? Yes, that's the recovery teams that are out with the capsule right now. They're getting prepared. They're checking for hydrazine fuel. That's the first thing that they're going to check for, is any sort of residual hydrazine. Make sure it's safe for people to actually be there.
In the control room, but I mean, is that
let's see. Oh, Daniel says they actually landed the Starliner exact same site, space shuttle landing at White Sands Missile Range in the 80s. Yes, that was STS-3, the big wheelie landing. So it was the one and only time that they landed. I think it was Space Shuttle Columbia that landed at the White Sands Missile Range for STS-3. It was a contingency. They landed there. And I call it the wheelie landing because as they came in, they were bringing let's do it this way. They were bringing the nose gear down. They landed the main gear. They're bringing the nose gear down, and then they got to about 3 feet, and then it went whoop, and then it came back down, and then it actually landed. Kind of a cool video to see. But from what I had read, that landing in the White Sands Missile Range was talked about for many years after that by astronauts and maintenance crews for the space shuttle, because for years and years after that landing, they were still finding silt and sand inside Space Shuttle Columbia. Even after they had cleaned it and processed it and everything, they were still finding it years later. So I think they tried to avoid that at all costs in future space shuttle landings, which is why we never saw it again, or I think one of the reasons why we never saw it again. It was also a tertiary landing site, so it was always the third option. You know, obviously you had Cape Canaveral, Edwards Air Force Base in California, and then White Sands Missile Range. Let's see.
We hope to be going out to Boeing's Joshua shortly with the landing recovery team. He's in that convoy of vehicles.
Let's see. Wait, isn't it blown up in the re-entry? What blown up in the re-entry? I'm not sure what you're. Oh, the heat shield. Isn't it blown up in the re-entry? So it is an ablative heat shield. It means portions of it are burned away, but not the entire thing doesn't burn away. That would be very, very bad. So a good majority of the heat shield is still with the spacecraft, and they drop the entire thing just prior to landing. They have to drop the heat shield away so they can actually get to the landing bags. They're little inflated bags that they land on for a nice soft landing. Those are behind the heat shield, so they have to drop the heat shield away so they can inflate those bags there.
Out in White Sands, New Mexico.
Please rewind 9 minutes. There's another parachute down. Is that the heat shield? Oh yeah, that's probably the heat shield that Savage is talking about. It drops from underneath the capsule. That was the base heat shield that we saw drop away. So as it's under parachute, the heat shield drops, and that's, like I said, that's how they get the landing bags inflated. All the landing systems that we saw in action today, but a number of let's see, rewind 10 minutes. We can rewind real quick. Let's see. 10 minutes, you say?
A number of the navigation system demonstrations were accomplished.
We'll go back to live in a minute. Oh, there's the landing. So there's 10 minutes. And you heard. I'm assuming you're talking about. Let's see. I don't know. Wait, this is after landing.
First Starliner flight test vehicle.
let me see if I can find the heat shield jettison, because I think that's what you're talking about, is the heat shield. So it would have been before this.
EP57 cameras, infrared cameras, giving us as good a view as we could expect at nighttime.
Oh, right here. Right there? That's... oh, I can't find it again. I think that's what you're talking about.
Down to the surface of the desert in New Mexico. Everything continuing to look good on this camera.
Well, all right. I'll let this play out here for a minute here while we chat. But yeah, we should see...
as good a view as we could expect at nighttime.
I believe it's the heat shield jettison that you're talking about.
Starliner descending under 3 good main chutes.
Let's see. I'm going back through a couple comments here. Possible it came down close to the capsule. Is that possible? Yeah, the heat shield jettison's pretty late in the process. So it is pretty late in the process when they actually jettison that heat shield.
All 6 airbags are confirmed to have deployed.
This is
and they are fully
airbags are deployed, so we've obviously we're a little too. All right, so here we'll start from here. So here's the mains coming out.
You see 3 main chutes. 3 main chutes. Billowing up, we have.
Oh, capsule was down already, says Savage.
Chutes. We see the red,
that might have just been it could have been the drogues or the risers coming down.
2 minutes, 53 seconds from touchdown.
But we'll watch the whole landing. There's about 2 minutes until landing again.
And the rotation handle has deployed.
Let's see. While this is playing out, let me go back through a couple more comments here.
Base heat shield has jettisoned. That is the base heat shield falling away as planned.
Let's see. Street Player says missing the right orbit is
the last of the milestones.
this is a failed mission. They won't remove Rosie now. She's very heavy. She'll be removed later. Yeah, I don't think they're going to remove Rosie, but they are going to open the hatch, so I think we'll see Rosie. But I don't think they will. They're not going to remove Rosie. So what is going on? So at this point, Starliner has landed. This is a replay here. Probably should have thrown up my replay text so everybody knows that this is a replay. Where is my replay text? Yeah, there we go. So I can throw this up just to make sure that nobody's confused if you're jumping into the stream a little bit late. So this is a replay of the landing of the Starliner capsule. Boeing
6 airbags are confirmed to have deployed.
Oh, we missed the heat shield. Missed the heat shield deployment again, but it was in there somewhere. But I don't think that's what Savage was looking for.
Just about 800 meters left to go.
We'll wait to check that out. But so what we're looking at here, Boeing's mission had to get cut short a little bit by a number of days, actually, because they initially launched on Friday. They missed their intended orbit and burned too much fuel, so they could not get to the International Space Station to do the planned docking demonstrations. So this mission got cut short, and they had to recover the capsule, bring it home just 2 days after launch instead of the 8-day mission that they had planned.
Less than 1 minute to landing.
And that's what we're seeing here today, is it actually come back and lands, which it did about 30 minutes ago. This is a replay of that actual landing. We're going to watch the replay, and then we're going to look at something that Savage is very curious about on our YouTube channel. It says there's another parachute that comes down when it goes to split screen when it's in a small window. So I'm not sure what he's referring to, but we're going to watch that here in just a minute when they go back to split screen. He says it's after landing.
Just 300
we'll check it out.
Left to go. That's 984 feet. Very close now.
Let's see. Did we miss anything else for
20 seconds to landing the first Starliner flight test?
Comments. We're about 20 seconds to landing here. At minus 15 mark in the NASA live stream now. All right, yeah, we'll check that out here in just minus 15 minutes. Yeah, so we're pretty close to that. We're a couple minutes off, I suppose. So we'll watch this. We'll watch this through to the landing, and then I'll try to get to the 15-minute mark, I suppose. So there's our landing. We've got the 3 main parachutes. At some point,
Starliner touches down in the desert.
Although it does
of
look like
Mexico.
this one
An
parachute kind of
historic
pulls
landing in White
tight.
Sands, New Mexico
That could
concludes
be.
the first flight test of Boeing's Starliner spacecraft.
We talked
The
about this
first time
earlier.
an
Those
American human
those
made
parachutes
capsule
have to
has
be
landed on
jettisoned so it doesn't drag the capsule through the desert. It looks like these parachutes are actually pulling tight, which would not be good. We want those to jettison. Because if you get a little bit of a stronger wind, although they generally would try to avoid landing in a stronger wind, but potentially, without jettisoning those parachutes, that could start to drag the capsule across the desert floor. That's not ideal. I mean, if it's done lightly, wouldn't be too uncomfortable. There you go. That looks like they jettisoned the parachutes right there. Yeah, that does look kind of seems a little bit late for jettison, but I believe that the astronauts on board could also jettison the parachutes manually as well, and that's what they may do that. So that might be automated jettison, or maybe the ground recovery teams are triggering that. But I believe the onboard astronauts could jettison those parachutes as well, so they might do it a little bit sooner than what we see in the broadcast there. So, all right, let's see if we can find. So here's the split screen that Savage was talking about here.
Spectacular entry.
Oh, right there, I see it. I see what he's talking about.
Just a reminder, we've got a lot of work left for
I see what you're talking about, Savage. And that could very well be one of the drogue shoots. I'm going to watch it again here. I wanted to back it up. Atala wants to know if I use OBS. No, I don't use OBS for streaming. I use a software called Wirecast.
And also the landing team there in New
Let's
Mexico.
see. So here's the split screen that we were looking for.
We hit the bullseye.
And
Starliner came down
there is another little, what looks like a
Sands,
parachute gently streaming down from up here. Yeah, right there.
Spectacular entry this morning, and of course,
yeah, I don't know.
remarkable images coming down.
That could be one of the drogue chutes. It's coming down pretty lightly. I don't think that's the heat shield, because the heat shield drops and has no parachute. That would have landed before the capsule landed. So yeah, maybe that could be one of the drogue chutes coming down. I have no idea what that is, but it's coming down very gently. So that would be my guess, is maybe a drogue chute. Let's see. All right, let's go back to live so that we know what we're missing here. Looks like all the mission control crew are hanging out, and looks like everybody's pretty much celebrating because their aspect is done. And so you can see the capsule in the back there with the recovery crews. Hopefully they'll give us this view so we can actually see this. And I don't know how long it's going to be till hatch opening. We'll see. We'll see if we can go a little while longer. It might be a while before they actually do hatch opening, although I believe, if I remember correctly, from the Crew Dragon, is that one of the important things for commercial crew was they let's see.
After landing to prevent the parachutes from pulling the vehicle over in high winds. Vehicle is looking good, is also the report, and the landing went very smoothly today. I think the team will be very pleased with the way today's deorbit and landing went.
Yeah, it looked very good from my untrained eye here. But so what I was going to say is, I think one of the big things for the actual crew recovery itself that they talked about during the SpaceX missions was that they needed to be able to pull astronauts out of the capsule within 1 hour of landing, just for safety reasons or in case there was some sort of medical issue. They wanted to make sure that they could get the astronauts out of there. So it should be in good shape there.
You can see the
I got this can't be for real, but did I get a comment from Mr. Beast? That can't be for real, right? The actual Mr. Beast? That's pretty fantastic. Mr. Beast, congratulations on making 20 million trees for Team Trees. I was happy to be happy to be a part of that little tiny part. You got just a tiny little video, but that was pretty awesome. So yeah, if you're unaware, Team Trees was since we're talking about this, Team Trees was Mr. Beast and Mark Rober's I don't know, call to action for the entire internet community and all the YouTubers to try to get people to donate and plant 20 million trees before January 1st, 2020. And they did that. They started it October 25th and raised $20 million in just a couple of weeks, which is amazing. But if you still want to join, the website's still available, and you can still help plant trees. It's teamtrees.org. For every $1 donated, you can get one new tree to exist in the world that would not have existed otherwise. And it's not an end-all solution to climate change, but it's a good push forward, and it's just a nice thing to see that the internet community come together for that. So anyway, so there you go. Insult Clown says this Mr. Beast has 4 subscribers, so it's not the real Mr. Beast. Oh man, I was so excited. But anyways, we still talk about Team Trees anyways. I have a Team Trees video. If you're interested, you go check it out.
All indications
anyway, so
the loads on landing are that it was extremely smooth.
I hope they get propulsive landing approved for cargo mission. Oh, that's so Jason's talking about the
smooth landing when the CFT crew,
the SpaceX Crew Dragon capsules, which they're not going to be reused for crew, but they are going to be reused for cargo missions. And SpaceX still has the capability to land propulsively with the Crew Dragon capsule, although they won't do that with crew, but they could potentially do that with the cargo missions. But they do have to get approval from NASA to be able to do that, because not only are they bringing cargo to the International Space Station, but they're also bringing cargo back. So the landing is just as important for NASA, even for cargo Dragon missions.
Go out and recover the base heat shield and the forward heat shield and the parachute.
So it looks like we can see crew out there hanging around the capsule.
Boeing Starliner factory in
not sure
Florida.
Exactly what's going on. Capsule looking good from this shot. I know, I do like this shot. And the sun is starting to come up at the White Sands Missile Range, so we should start to see better video and better coloring here. Because I'm assuming this is still infrared. It still seems pretty bright for the time of day, but they may switch to a regular camera at some point for that view. So.
And this spacecraft will be used again.
Yeah, these guys, somebody said 2 gas testers walking around the capsule. Yeah, these guys have what look like protective suits on. So yeah, they're likely they're doing that first test for residual hydrazine, checking to see if it's going to be safe for everybody else to come on site here. So I guess the nice thing, one of the really nice things about Starliner is the fact that it does land on land. The crew that's here, the recovery crew, is on site much faster than SpaceX was able to get on site. I mean, they did have their recovery ships, Go Searcher and Go Navigator, right there, but it did take them a while to kind of coordinate and back the ship up and then try to get divers in the water and hook it up to the craft and then get the craft onto the ship. I mean, it took a good while for them to get to that capsule. It may still take an hour for them to do all of this stuff that they're working on here, but I don't know, it's nice to see these people at the capsule this quickly. Although I guess the divers were at the capsule pretty quickly for SpaceX too, so maybe it's not that much different. It seems different to me as I'm watching this because they're walking around the capsule and inspecting it like right there. It just feels a little bit different to me. All right, let's see. What else did we miss here? Yeah, so the landing itself, re-entry and landing seemed much better than the actual launch and getting it into orbit. So I think we're in much better shape in terms of getting prepared for commercial crew flights on board the Starliner. Still going to be big question mark on when commercial crew flights will actually happen, because at least for Starliner, because likely they're going to have to do something. I know they've done investigations on the issue during launch, the anomaly that occurred, but they're likely going to have to do something to make sure and assure NASA that it will not happen again, because they're not going to want to throw crew on board if there's not a full, and reassurances that they've completely resolved whatever the issue was during launch that caused that anomaly. Gregorius says it feels different because no U.S. capsules have landed on land before. That's true. That also feels very different because we don't have a lot of crew capsules that land on land. The only one that will also land on land that I can think of for the U.S., but this is suborbital, would be Blue Origin's New Shepard capsule lands on land, but that's suborbital, so it's not quite the same. I mean, this is a lot more in depth here, where you're bringing a capsule in back from orbit. I mean, that's crazy. But then you've got the the Soyuz capsule, so it's not like we've never seen this before. The Soyuz capsule does also land on land, but I know the Soyuz capsule and their recovery process always kind of amazes me. It'll be interesting to see if this is similar or if it's different for Starliner capsules. But they're pulling crew out of the Soyuz capsule, and the crew have been in space usually for 6 months, so their muscles are not accustomed to being back on Earth gravity again. So they're always pulling them out of the capsule, and then they just set them up in lawn chairs, just on display. It seems like they're just gonna hang back and they kind of lounge around, and they're like, yeah, well, we were in space, and now we're just kind of chilling here. I don't know. It just always seems such a surreal sight to see 3 astronauts come out of these sophisticated technological machines that just brought them back from a space station, and then they're just chilling in a lawn chair. Yeah, no big deal. Just came back from space. Anyway, so there's my spiel on that. What are we looking at now? What is this? I don't know what we're seeing here. Savage says almost no plasma marks on the outer shell. I didn't necessarily notice. I wasn't really quite paying attention to it, but now that you think of it, or now that you mention it, I didn't really notice any either. That would be kind of interesting. I would expect at least a little bit from the bottom portion of it, but that also could have all been jettisoned away with the base heat shield. There's a pretty good portion of the base heat shield that is jettisoned away, so it might be most of that all taken out when they got rid of the heat shield. Let's see. Gravy Bear thinks that they just dropped it out of an airplane. I don't think so, Gravy Bear, but that's all right. There is an upper heat shield as well, but it doesn't completely. I don't think it completely covers the capsule. I think the upper heat shield that gets jettisoned is covering the drogue chutes. It's basically just a shroud that's covering where all the parachute capsules are, or parachute packaging. I don't know what to call it. The parachute section where everything's stored for parachutes. That's what I'm trying to say.
Watching the landing was a thing of beauty today. He was very encouraged by what he saw. He reported that a lot of tasks were accomplished during this flight. We learned a lot. That's why you test. And this was a challenge for the flight team because you had to do some of the flying in a non-optimum situation, but they still managed to do a lot of things right, and we learned a lot about this vehicle This is the first of the space-proven models of the Starliner spacecraft. We have a crewed flight test version back in Florida that's being prepared for the crewed flight test to carry astronauts, and we have a pad abort test vehicle also. So the fleet now has a vehicle that has orbited the Earth 33 times and landed back in New Mexico.
That's a great start. Bridenstine also mentioned that he called Vice President Mike Pence from this room, and Pence mentioned that he knows that we just made history here. So kudos coming in from all over the place at the moment. We are also able to get one of the first still photographs from one of our NASA photographers in the field. We have to show for you here.
That's
This
cool.
Came from Aubrey Gemini, one of our NASA photographers, taken of Starliner making its way down to its landing in New Mexico at 6:58 a.m. Central Time.
That's a pretty cool photo right there of the capsule coming back down. You can actually see it in color, and there's the heat shield jettison right there. That's pretty sweet to see. A little nicer in color than the black and white infrared. Surprised that they were able to get such. That's actually a really nice picture given the time of day there. Surprised how good of a picture they were actually able to get. So anyways, I was looking at somebody over on our Discord channel. Gregorius said that he got a card that said YouTube muted this 4 minutes. I wonder if I got a content ID mismatch. Anytime you have one of these big news type newsworthy big events like this, occasionally we get content ID automatically claims part of our video as copyright, and we end up having to dispute it and usually resolve, everything's just fine, but that can happen pretty frequently. So I wonder if that happened, and let me know if anybody else saw that notification. But so a couple people debating on whether SpaceX is better or Starliner is better. I mean, I don't think, and somebody asked if I think, Steven said, are you saying SpaceX landing technology is not as advanced? No, I'm not saying that at all. In fact, actually, one might argue that because SpaceX's capsule actually has the capability to do propulsive landings, they might be more advanced, although they're not using it for crewed landings. But no, I'm not saying that at all. The only thing I was saying about the big difference between the two is, one's landing on land, one's landing on water, and this just feels so much different to just see crew walking around. Like, we just don't. I don't know. You never really saw this before. Apollo, Gemini, Mercury, SpaceX's Crew Dragon, they all landed in the water, and so this is really the first time we've seen like an actual orbital class capsule from the U.S. I mean, we see it with Soyuz, but from the U.S., an orbital class capsule that's landing on land, and just to see like pickup trucks driving around it and crew walking around, and I just imagine like the astronauts being on board and like just hanging out inside, and like they can't open the hatch right away. Like there's preparations they have to do. They got to make sure the hydrazine gas is all contained. They gotta I don't know, whatever you gotta do, whatever they're doing right now. All these preparation steps before they open the hatch. Obviously, there's going to be some sort of way that they get to the hatch, because that's a good ways above the ground there, and so they're going to get this all prepared. But it seems very odd just to see everybody kind of just walking around and hanging out around this orbital class capsule. And yeah, it doesn't look like there's a lot of burn marks from any of the plasma or re-entry interface, which is kind of actually really impressive that there are not that many burn marks that I can see, at least. But this is I believe all of this was exposed to space here, because you can see here's the thrusters and everything, and you can still see the NASA logos and stuff. This is the forward heat shield that was jettisoned, was up here. It was protecting the parachutes as they came back, and the base heat shield was all down here. So we've got all of that could have that would have been received tons of heating from re-entry. Let's see, a couple people that we got a lot of people that don't think this is real, but all right, don't think you're correct on that, but somebody asked, Street Player wanted to know, did the capsule ever make it to the space station? It did not, unfortunately. It did not have enough fuel. It was in the wrong orbit, so it did not make it to the International Space Station. So they had to bring it back. Had to bring it back early. Let's see. Jason says this landing is brought to you by Chevy Silverado. When your crew depends on you, bring them a crew cab. I like that, Jason. That's nice. It does feel like the opportunity for a sponsorship right there with all these trucks out there. Let's see, Eliza. If it landed on a cow, that's kind of. It'd be. I'd have more questions on why there's cows at the White Sands Missile Range if there were cows out there.
Entry and landing.
Let's see. Eliza says, I hate all this faux optimism for the sake of the public. This is not fantastic. This is a failure, and it needs to be called that. Well, I mean, I think we want to. I think you want to be a little bit careful on what, just completely outright calling it a failure. I would say, it's not out of line to say that this mission had a failure. And that it did not go perfectly. That being said, it's not a complete failure because there was important things learned from this mission that it needed to be done. So, like, just the fact to bring a capsule back, entry, descent, and landing. I mean, if you go back and you rewind back to like the Apollo days, the Gemini days, the Mercury days. I mean, they ran test flights where all they did was go up, do maneuvers, and make sure that they could operate the controls and things like that, and then they came back and landed. And that's essentially exactly what we did here for Boeing's flight. So we did actually accomplish a lot of I say we, like I'm involved in this. I'm not involved. They did accomplish a lot of things to prove that the crew capsule was capable of sustaining crew and capable of operating in space. That being said, there was a failure in the mission. They did not get to the orbit that they were supposed to. They did not get to the International Space Station, so their intended objectives were not completely reached. They did solve some of or accomplish some of the tasks, a subset of the tasks that they needed to accomplish. But yeah, that would. I don't know. That's my spiel on just outright calling it a complete failure. I don't think it's fair because it's still a very impressive mission, and it's still very impressive that they've launched Starliner and successfully returned it back to Earth and performed some maneuvers. And when you have test flights like this, like having something going wrong isn't unusual. I mean, it's actually. I find it more unusual when you have when nothing goes wrong, because that seems like a very difficult objective to achieve, to have nothing go wrong. All right, I want to listen into this here, so I'm going to turn this back up.
We're working on getting some better video uplinks. We have our situational awareness camera up, but we're working on getting our closer handheld cameras up for you. Hopefully we can get that working for you soon, and so you can get some good up-close views. Right now, the Boeing fire rescue teams are moving the platform in front of the crew module. Green team is working on inflating the environmental enclosure. That's if you can kind of see what's going on behind the crew module from the perspective of the situational awareness camera. They're inflating that in between that HVAC trailer there. So you'll see kind of that big inflatable enclosure kind of hug the vehicle, and they're going to start getting some heat on there again to make sure those propulsion lines don't freeze. Gold team has moved in and done their assessment. Everything is healthy on the vehicle. Silver team has grounded the vehicle, and now they've moved on to recovering the parachutes. There's a beautiful pink-orange horizon to the east as the sun is coming up. Really a beautiful day here out in the desert, although it is still pretty cold, but the teams are working hard. They're working through the cold. Next up, you should see the medical truck start to move into place beside that mobile access platform. That is just an exercise for today. That medical truck won't be used today. The crew is actually just getting out of the trucks in front of me here. You might see them start appearing in the SA camera in their pink vests. But really, just overall a great morning. This team is executing exactly what they have trained for over and over and over again. And hopefully we can get some better views as our camera guys move in a little closer. We're trying to reestablish a microwave link to our satellite feed. We think maybe on the drive out here, one of our connections might have got jostled out, but we want to get you some better views soon, but we're glad you're getting a look at Starliner on the ground. So I'll let you guys take it from here.
Thank you, Josh.
Interesting that they say they're working on better views, like they're, I don't know, almost like they're not happy with this view. Given what we had leading up to this, I'm actually very happy with this view in particular. Like we're seeing stuff happening. This is kind of interesting to me. So I'm curious what the better views are that they're really going for. But yeah, all of this stuff that they're going through right now with inflating the environmental habitat and getting the medical truck in, like they're pretty much simulating everything that they would do for crew recovery here. So even though there's no crew that are actually on board today, they're still going to go through all the steps and go through all the recovery processes so that they're fully prepared. Let's see. I love the cow discussion that's happening in the YouTube comments here. Finally, Frobard admits who the cow culprit was that started the entire cow conversation. I missed the whole start of that conversation, but I was reading all the comments go by about everybody commenting about cows and who's landing on cows and whether it's going to be patties or steak. It's just like reading the comments, like what is happening? But I'm glad for Eliza's sake that the that the real cow culprit has come forward and identified themselves, so people stop blaming Eliza. Let's see. I think right now they're on Earth and they're about to launch this thing to the moon because all the members. Nope, that's not quite where we're at. So this capsule just returned from orbit from its mission that was intended to go to the International Space Station, but ended early here. But yeah, now they're fitting environmental control or environmental tent there, environmental control tent that they're going to fit over the top of the Starliner, protect the Starliner capsule as well as the crew there. And now they're looks like they're going to back that platform up, and then they're going to then we'll hopefully open the hatch here shortly and get a view inside of Starliner, and hopefully maybe see how Rosie's doing. Hopefully Rosie's the anthropomorphic test dummy or test device that is on board. Had a whole bunch of sensors on board measuring acceleration, G loads, environmental conditions, pressure points, all that kind of stuff. A whole bunch of sensors on board Rosie. We've also got the Snoopy zero-G indicator inside the capsule as well. And hopefully we'll see all of those in place here shortly. Unfortunately, the space station crew, which Anne McLean, when the Crew Dragon went up, got a ton of pictures of the Space Kirby, the zero-G Earth little plush device that went up with Crew Dragon. Actually, I have one of them. They're way over there. It's way over there. I can't reach it right now. But this one had Snoopy on board instead of the little plush Earth. But let's listen in for a minute.
There you see the mobile access platform backing ever so slowly. They're being very careful not to damage that thermal protection system.
Josh, have you had a chance to talk with any of the astronauts? Get any of their thoughts on watching the landing?
I have not. They got out of the car and walked straight up to the vehicle while we're trying to get this video link back up for you guys. But I will be sure to grab them as soon as I can.
Understandable if they want to hurry over.
Yeah, I know Josh is back in Houston watching, and Sonny's here, and I'm sure she's extremely pleased seeing her ride back on Earth safely, executing a pretty flawless landing. 2 drogues, 3 main parachutes, 6 airbags. That's what we want to see every time.
And Josh, how does this look compared to what we saw after the pad abort test?
So I was honestly expecting a little bit of a kind of thermal scorch marks almost on the vehicle, but it looks almost as good as the day it left the factory in Florida. It was, even all of the logos, the NASA logo, the Boeing logos, kind of the hash marks we have around the top where the forward heat shield meets the vehicle, those are all 100% perfectly intact. Now you can see the medical trucks starting to back up. So we actually custom designed those medical trucks. Those were surplus Army 5-ton trucks. And we kind of outfitted it with that platform you might be able to see on the back of the truck, and the interior was completely refitted to be a pretty state-of-the-art field medical facility. Because once again, when the astronauts come out of the hatch, they're going straight into that medical truck just to make sure that they're healthy after spending an extended time in orbit. Once again, you see the red team establishing access to the hatch. Once they lower those stairs, Selena Dopart, one of our human factors engineers, will go up and actually open the hatch. I can see her standing to the left of the platform with the hard hat on.
And Josh, I know tell us a little bit about some of the practice stuff. This is what I'm getting at is just like the flight control team does simulations, just like the launch team does simulations, the landing team has walked through this a number of times out in White Sands, correct?
Yeah, they have done it about 4 or 5 times as a full team, and that's 4 or 5 separate times when the whole, the fire rescue teams come from Charleston, Seattle, a lot of the major, California, a lot of the major Boeing facilities across the country. And then the Starliner program teams come from Houston and Florida mostly. So they have taken, over the past couple of years, 4 or 5 times, they all come together and run through these exercises. And then individually, each team kind of practices their routines multiple times throughout the year, make sure everyone stays fresh, knows exactly what they're doing. Pretty delicate operation. And, there's some very time-critical elements to it, especially when we get crew on board. This time, since it's the first time the team is actually doing it for real, we're taking our time. There's not crew inside, but we do have a requirement to get crew out of the vehicle an hour after touchdown. But this time, the vehicle landed and powered itself off. And so that kind of gave the team plenty of time to make sure that they're doing this right. They're doing it deliberately and intentionally. And, really the biggest time critical thing was getting that environmental enclosure over the vehicle and heating it up a little bit in this kind of frigid desert air.
And Josh, we do have a report that goes along with your no scorch marks observation there. The re-entry cabin heating was a notably lower change in temperatures, which indicates a better than expected performance of the re-entry system. That's really good news, and I think this is it sounds like it's going to make it an easier refurbishment operation. You're the one who is out there in Florida all the time with the factory and with the refurbishment. Does that make sense to you?
Yeah, I actually, it'll be really great to see this vehicle back in Florida, because right now we have our other 2 spacecraft. The pad abort vehicle is in the factory, as well as the crew flight test vehicle. And, back when I first joined the program about 2 years ago, it was really awesome seeing 3 vehicles in flow. So when this comes back to Florida and they start processing it for Sonny and Josh's flight, plus the 2 international astronauts that are assigned to the vehicle, it'll be nice to see. It'll be kind of like getting the family back together.
I bet a lot of people are going to be excited to see it back in Florida.
Yeah, that's right. And, in the meantime, while we test and process and refurbish this vehicle for the next flight, the crew flight test vehicle is going through kind of final processing right now. the paddleboard vehicle. We actually
I'm gonna turn this down here a little bit because I had a couple of things that I wanted to chat about here while I was listening in to what they have. What they had to say there. So a couple of things that I wanted to clarify. Street Player over on Periscope said, why do they have the protection tent if the front is open? So that protection tent, I believe the primary purpose is actually for heating the capsule there, because they did mention that they wanted to get that on so that they could keep the capsule and the ground and the air around it heated so that the propellant lines didn't freeze, because I guess it's pretty cold there. I haven't checked the temperature, but I guess it's pretty cold there at the White Sands Missile Range, so they want to make sure that the propellant lines don't freeze. They're spending a lot of time putting this platform here up, which is very curious to me. Only because, I don't know, I guess I'm used to seeing, like these land landings, used to seeing the Soyuz, which is, I don't know, seems not nearly as, I guess, put together as this. Oh, there we go. So somebody's going up. All right, let's listen in. Looks like they're going to open the hatch here now. So they got that platform finally all situated.
That the inside of the vehicle was even better than we expected just is such a great feeling to know that we not only did our job, but better than we hoped it would perform. So that's really, really good to hear, and I think that puts a lot of confidence in these systems going forward.
Tori, I think we lost the first part of your question. Can we get you to run back over it?
Yeah, of course. So I was just saying that listening to Josh and seeing that the vehicle was as clean as it was, and Jimmy and I were talking about it in the studio just a few minutes ago, that the vehicle looks fantastic on the ground there, right? White, clean, way better than what we were expecting to see. We were expecting to see some char marks, maybe a little.
Are you calling through the Wi-Fi?
So it's really good looking out there, and it really just puts confidence in the analysis that we've done and the models that we have.
Drop the satellite comms.
Jim, does this look the way that you expected it to?
You know, it looked better than I expected it to. So I was really thinking that we were going to see at least a little bit of scorching right around where the shoulder comes up onto the vehicle, but those tiles are in all of the right places and they look just like they did when they left the factory. So that is a phenomenal thing to see.
Hey, we got it.
Thank you, Tori. And Jim, you're seeing seeing all this. You're seeing what the crew's going to see. How's this going? What are you thinking right now?
So for the crew involvement, one, the vehicle looking the way it does means good things for them coming back, but it also means good things for the parts on the inside of the spacecraft they're going to reuse as well. So we are going to reuse things like the tablets.
All right, so they're doing a lot of talking here. I love the guy with the broom that's sweeping the stairs. Like, it seems like, I mean, obviously, I don't know, they must be doing it for good reason, but it seems like something that would just not be that critical at this stage would be the broom sweeping the stairs. It's also interesting to see how they're actually how they're opening this hatch. Like, you just got a bag of tools there with a socket wrench that she's about to open the hatch with. Looks like they're pretty much ready to open the hatch here. They've got that little outer access panel opened up, ready to go. They got some of their Gopros there set up and ready. Their platform that took forever to set up. I mean, I think some of the reason for that is they're just trying to protect those thermal tiles on the outside of the capsule, so they don't want to set something up against it, like a ladder or something like that. But somebody mentioned in the comments earlier, seems like a ladder would be sufficient. Didn't really need this complicated platform. But yeah, I think the platform is probably the better solution. It just seemed like it took forever for them to set that up and get it. It looked like they had to not only just set it in place, but also jack it up a good 2 feet there to get it to the appropriate height, which is kind of interesting. And it seemed to take a little while, but looks like we should be getting hatch opening here any moment. Glenn says, anyone have a 16 millimeter 6-point socket? That's kind of what it looks like they're doing there, trying to find the right socket there. Let's see. Yeah, somebody talked about them wanting to go to the bathroom. Yeah, there's a good chance that the crew would have diapers on for that descent, because they would be stuck there. Don't forget. So they have Boeing's required to be able to get the crew out of the capsule within 1 hour of touchdown. But that 1 hour wait that they have is really nothing compared to the wait between when they get in the capsule to landing, because they would have departed the space station 5 hours ago. So they got a window of at least 5 hours, and that's like five hours from departure to landing. They don't really have the opportunity to be like, oh wait, hold on a minute, let me just go hit the bathroom one more time before we depart. Like, they got to really sort that out before departure. It's not like they can just hurry off to the bathroom real quick and then depart. So they will have had 6 hours or so without having to use a restroom facility or bathroom facility. So this 45-minute or 1 hour wait that they have here is it's really not a big deal for them to they're gonna probably have some sort of diaper on during landing, which is what they do that for launch as well. I mean, it's kind of I don't know. I can't imagine doing that as an adult, but it's what you got to do. It's necessary. So the one thing that I do think is interesting is Columbia on Periscope says, "I told you to go before we left." Yeah, right. So one thing that's interesting at this point, like I said, Boeing is required to be able to get that crew out of the capsule within 1 hour of landing. And we are now past that mark. It's been on the ground for over an hour, and the hatch is not open at this point. So we're very close. I think SpaceX actually was the same way. I don't recall the exact timing for SpaceX, but I do seem to recall that SpaceX also had the same issue where they didn't make the 1 hour mark. They were a little past that. Not by much, but they were a little bit past that. And I think Boeing is going to be a little bit past that, not by much though, maybe just a few minutes here, because they're still working. Oh, there you go, the hatch is open now. So right there. Actually, Boeing is almost right on the money. They're like 3 minutes past that, because right here, really the 1 hour timing is in case there was some sort of medical emergency. So if there was a medical emergency, basically they could be yanking the crew out at this point here right now. Once they get this little whatever this flange device is here that they're putting in, going to be able to get them out of the capsule and get them going. So let's listen in a little bit and see what they have to say as they're
ground crews getting their first look inside the cabin.
Hopefully we get this close-up view that we have right here. I'd like to see them bring that right up to the capsule so we can see inside, which I think they said they were going to do.
And the frame that you saw pushed into place there in the hatch is actually a cover for those same seals that they were just relieving the pressure on before they could open the hatch. And we can see the ground team going through their carefully planned steps as they prepare the spacecraft, putting a cover over that hatch that they just opened a few minutes ago. First, they're going to confirm that the cabin air is safe. This flight test produced a lot of data for engineers, a lot of information, and a lot of operational processes to see how it performs in space. And of course, two of the big parts of that are the launch and then the return to Earth. These are very dynamic events, shouldn't be overlooked. And we see right now that Starliner is doing very well this morning.
Putting some Putting some boot covers on before they head in, but looks like, yep, there she goes.
And we have our first landing recovery team engineer about to go inside the Starliner vehicle. Selena Dopart.
So creepy. There's somebody on the broadcast that keeps whispering into the microphone, and it's really creepy sounding. Although Gregorius points out
for those
that
who
you
are
can hear
just
my kids in the
joining us,
background, so that
Boeing Starliner spacecraft
away.
touched down in White Sands, New Mexico, an hour and 6 minutes ago.
Not any.
Came down under
less
3
awkward that,
main parachutes.
Trying to watch.
Touchdown
on, and we got
6
whispering
airbags.
and singing happening.
Now we see Selena Dopart of the landing recovery team moving into the Starliner vehicle. This mission was without a crew.
You hear the guy in the broadcast.
As the first
Your mic is still on.
flight test of the vehicle in space. But we do have Rosie the Rocketeer in the commander's seat, an anthropometric test device, gathering all sorts of data. She's outfitted with all kinds of instruments that's going to tell us exactly what the crew can expect. Early indications are the crew can expect a really good ride down.
Yeah, so I would like to see, I want to see inside this capsule. Can we see Rosie? It sounds like they're taking some measurement. You can kind of hear them talking about humidity. Said the humidity was like 51% or something like that. So it sounds like they're taking some environmental measurements of the inside of the capsule at this point. So, right. Yeah, I guess they said it's down to 45 now. I'm just trying to listen into what some of the radio chatter is in the background there, what they're talking about. But they've got one recovery engineer inside, and they hopefully they'll show us inside. Be nice. We don't really have much of a view. Somebody at Columbia mentioned there's a GoPro attached to the railing. There is that GoPro right here.
Where's it at?
It's in my car. The techs know where it is.
RTO.
And we do have reports from the landing recovery team that Rosie the Rocketeer is still strapped in the commander's seat.
That's good. I would be very surprised if she wasn't. Imagine you open the capsule and you're like, well, she's strapped in, but she's in a different seat. That would be interesting.
It's in her vehicle. The tech should know where it's at.
I don't know what they're looking for. They're looking for something else, and they just keep saying it. They're like, it's in my car.
Down to 31.
While we're standing by on this, we do have another photo that came in after Starliner's touchdown from our NASA photographers there on the scene.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. So you don't pull the AC out?
And go. Waiting for this photo. I thought they were going to show us this other photo that came in. She said there was another photo.
We can't do anything to it. So I can't change it. Yes, sir. Are we done with it? Just launch
There it is.
Sorry, slight delay there, but there's that photo I was promising. This again taken by the NASA photographers on the scene, and there's the one that we got from Starliner just after it landed at 5:58 a.m. Mountain Time, 6:58 a.m. Central Time. You can see that is right at landing because of the position of the parachutes. Those photographs coming in from Aubrey Gemini, a NASA photographer there on the scene.
It really was a great view this morning as Starliner touched down about an hour and 10 minutes ago. Now we're back to live imagery of the landing recovery team as they look in on the hatch. They are...
I don't know why. Maybe, I don't know, maybe you guys feel this about me, but I guess I sometimes do this where I get half a sentence out and then I stop talking, but it seems like all the time the broadcast host gets like half a sentence out and then just shuts his mic off. I mean, I guess I sometimes do that. Usually when they start talking over me, I get half a sentence out and then I stop talking, but I never know when I can jump in because he like starts half a sentence and then he just stops. And I'm like, can I talk now? I said, all right, well, anyways. So a couple of people talking about how complicated this is. Like, can't you just open the door and crawl out? Don't forget, this is a pretty complicated piece of machinery. They want to make sure it's a complicated piece of machinery. There's also a lot of sand and dust and things like that around. They want to make sure that, dust from their boots isn't going to get into the systems. Dust from just the general air isn't going to ruin critical components. So they're gonna put some protective covers over everything. They're also running tests. They want to see how everything performs. So that's where they're measuring humidity. They're trying to see what the environment is inside the cabin. They do have some sensors on board, but they're also this kind of double checks and make sure the sensors on board are actually accurate. So they've got a lot of work and measurements and collecting data and things like that. I mean, this is a scientific process. This isn't like, we just arrived to grandma's house and everybody hop out of the car, we're done. We gotta take some measurements and collect some data, and we're doing this scientifically here. So yeah, it's a long process to actually get them out of the capsule, but if there was an emergency, they could speed that up a little bit. Like the crew could be out at this point, but they are taking their time here to make sure that they're doing it right. So 30-some wants to know, where did this land? This is the White Sands Missile Range, which if you're not familiar, while we're waiting, we were going to show this before landing. And I don't know, we don't know exactly where, or at least I don't know exactly where the actual landing was, but the White Sands Missile Range, let's see, I'll switch you over to here just real quick. We'll come back to the video in a second, but White Sands Missile Range is down here in New Mexico. So here you are for context here, and this is the actual, let's see, let me zoom out a little bit, because the White Sands Missile Range is actually quite large. This whole area here is the White Sands Missile Range. So here's White Sands National Monument, and then you've got all this area is the White Sands Missile Range. So that's where it landed here. It came in off of Baja California here, like down this direction, came this way, landed up here. So I'm going to switch back to the video here, because actually the astronauts are actually on site. They were showing them. Hopefully they go back to it here now.
Right now we're looking at the
is this them right there? That's not them.
As they shuffle around with the landing recovery team.
All right.
There's a lot of activity out by that capsule.
Let's turn this back up here. Turn it up a little bit so we can hear what's going on. But we're waiting to see. I want to see a view inside, and then we'll probably call it a day here.
And there's a lot of activity around the capsule. This is a little bit reminiscent of the shuttle days, when everybody would gather around the shuttle after it landed. And of course, you have crews come in with the Soyuz landing in Kazakhstan.
Yeah, this is a little less remote than the shuttle, but a little more remote, or not quite as remote as the Kazakhstan landing. Still, it does start to look familiar, and it looks like we may be getting close to having the crew ready to talk with us. In fact, I'm going to toss it right on to Dan Hewitt, who is in the field. How are you doing, Dan?
Hey, Dan, I don't think has his program line working, so I'm going to take it from here. But, we're here with NASA's Nicole Mann, Boeing's Chris Ferguson, and NASA's Mike Fink. Guys, Nicole, I'll start with you. I'm guessing this is your first spacecraft landing.
This is my first spacecraft landing. It was incredible to see. We're so excited for the Boeing and NASA team, and the recovery forces today just did an incredible job.
Crystal clear day. You could see it from about 300 kilometers away. Good double sonic boom. watched all of the pyrotechnic ordnance that deployed the parachutes, take care of itself on the way down, and we saw it all the way to touchdown, even on just a crystal clear but cold morning. Worked great.
And Mike, your initial thoughts?
3 parachutes, 6 airbags, and a beautiful soft landing. Can't wait to try it out.
So we had a flawless launch. We had a couple of issues once we were up there. What's it mean now to see this vehicle come down, almost picture perfect?
Flight test data, flight test data, flight test data. We got a lot of data on the launch, the orbital portion of the flight, the ECLIS system, that's environmental control life support. Everything's worked great, and then we brought it home, and everything worked. It was great data, and we're going to analyze it, and we're going to see anything that we need to fix for the next flight. But it's looking good.
Now, Chris, I remember when I was with you down in the simulator in Houston, you talked about how much different this is going to be coming back than the shuttle because you're almost coming in backwards. Can you talk a little bit about that?
Yeah, what really impressed me was, the shuttle sort of glided into the atmosphere, and at the sort of at the end game, it was pretty steep. This was really steep, so it almost looked like it was going to overshoot the landing site, and at the last minute, gravity sort of took over, and it pretty much came straight on down. So I was a little curious about the boom. We got a nice double boom out of it. I wouldn't say it was real loud, but other than that, being able to just watch the entire sequence from the ground on down was just fantastic. I heard our radar team picked up lock right over the mountains as it was mountain rise, which is great. I heard that the WB-57 with reconnaissance and telemetry data picked up a lot as well. So we're going to have a lot to look at. I think really clean landing.
Now, the reason we took a little bit to get you guys over here, we had to go get you away from that base heat shield. You were examining that, Nicole, seeing the crew module and the heat shields around here, what did it look like seeing the hardware on the ground to you?
It was amazing to me. I couldn't imagine that it had just come through the atmosphere at incredible temperatures. It looked like it was in great shape. You could see when it impacted the ground that it had a little damage. But other than that, it really looked uniform, and it was really in great shape. I think we're going to get a lot of great data from recovering those.
Well, I know it's pretty cold out here. We might let you guys bundle back up and toss it back to you guys, Brandy and Steve, out in Houston. And I want to bundle back up too. It's freezing.
Thanks so much, Josh, and great to see the crew out there. And as you can see, we are now joined by Flight Director Richard Jones coming off a great landing. Welcome, Richard.
Thank you so much.
Thanks.
All right, so I'm sorry, we're going to turn the volume down on this guy here, but yeah, it looked great from my end. It's nice to see that the astronauts are right there. They're actually examining the hardware, looking at the heat shields, probably looking at the capsule itself. I imagine they're going to look inside the capsule and look around and everything else. So it'll be interesting. I was hoping that they were going to show us the inside. Gregorius doesn't think they're going to show us the inside of the capsule. I thought that they were going to show us that, because Boeing mentioned this on Twitter. They said they were going to have ground crews with cameras right there to show us Rosie. So that was what I was going off of. So I was hoping they were going to show us Rosie the Rocketeer, so we could at least get an image there. It kind of looks like they might have I don't know where the cameraman went. It seems like he's around there somewhere. Maybe they'll let him in a little bit closer, but anyway, it'd be nice to see a close-up of the heat shield. Yeah, I was hoping to see the heat shield as well, but I don't know how far away that is from the land. It sounds like it was pretty close if the astronauts were just there, so it's not too crazy far away. Let's see. We've got pretty sweet deck there. Yeah, it does seem like a very intense platform to get the crew out of there, or to get access to it. Let's see, the platform and cabin would be so the platform and the cabin that's off to the right hand side there, that's a medical facility, custom built medical facility for Boeing that the astronauts would come out and go straight to the medical facility to be checked out, especially since they will have been in space for quite a while. I don't think the CFT crew will be in space for a very long time. I think their mission's only supposed to be, I want to say isn't it like 2 weeks or something like that, that the CFT crew is going to be in space? But it's not going to be like 6 months. Eventually, they'll go to those 6-month rotations, I believe. But the Starliner won't stay up there for 6 months, and the Crew Dragon won't stay up there for 6 months. I imagine at some point this will work like the Space Shuttle program, where they would bring up, they could potentially, well, or even maybe like the Soyuz program, they could potentially bring up crew and then swap them, like, you know, one crew stays and another crew comes back. But that's usually, they have the Soyuz that stays up there for a long time before they swap crews and bring them back. So I imagine this is more like the Space Shuttle program, where they go up and spend a couple weeks at the space station and then everybody comes back. But I haven't really paid too much attention to what those future missions are going to be like. There you go. There's the astronauts looking inside. We've almost got a view inside. The camera's a little bit closer.
They're going to fly to the space station. It's going to be a great day to see that happen.
See, how
do you think?
They're all taking a peek inside. I was hoping maybe they were talking about this, but they're still interviewing the flight director. Glenn says the Starliner can stay attached to the station for 261 days. So that's longer than I thought. So that's interesting to know. They could potentially go up there for 6 months and then come back down. Let's see. Maybe they'll eventually have one for ISS for evacuation potential. Yeah, they could. If it can stay for 261 days, they could go up, stay there with one for 6 months, bring a second one up. The new crew would stay with the second one. The old crew would take the original one back to Earth. So that could be a little closer to the Soyuz methodology there. But let's get these astronauts out of the way. Let us see the camera view. Just kidding. I'm sure the astronauts have important stuff to look at. They want to take a peek and see what it's going to look like. Here we go. Now we're talking. Let's turn the volume up.
That's what I'm going to remember.
Getting some good
We're
views
getting some
inside.
of our first images from inside the cabin of Starliner. Richard, you're seeing these fresh just as we are. What are you thinking?
Gosh, you know, it looks. I'm looking inside that cabin, and it looks like all of the cargo did just fine. It's. I would love to see Rosie just sitting there, just to see how Rosie did. But boy, it looks like they had a really smooth ride. That's what it looks like to me.
Lots of good news today. You can see just a little bit of Rosie there on the left side of the screen.
I do see her.
Yeah.
Oh, there
Yeah. Looks like she had a great ride.
Well, and Richard, returning to kind of your journey so far, you were on hand for the last flight of the space shuttle, and now the first flight of this new vehicle. That's some interesting bookends.
It is, and being a part of STS-135, shutting down the shuttle program with that mission, it was very special. It was very emotional. Chris Ferguson was a part of that mission, so I'm paired with him again coming up on this upcoming CFT mission. But to start up a new program like this from the ground up, all of the years of hard work that many, many people put into this, it's very special. I will always remember that.
Yeah, I'm sure. What would you say that this team needs to do and get ready for between now and the next mission?
You know, what we need to do is we need to look at the data, right? We're going to grab all the data that we collected during this flight, break it down, look where things...
Sorry, I turned my mic back on. We've heard them say this a million times about how they're going to analyze the data, and they're going to go through and figure out how the flight went a little more precisely. But nice to see finally get a view of Rosie the Rocketeer over there hanging out, still strapped to the commander's seat. It'd be kind of scary if she wasn't. But also interestingly, you could see all the cargo still stacked up and ready for the that was supposed to be cargo for the International Space Station. There's food and supplies and things like that were intended to stay with the International Space Station, but obviously they didn't make it there. So they didn't get those supplies. But they all came back. We got Sonny here. Sonny. listen in for what she has to say.
She is going to be the first post-certification mission commander of this ship that's behind us here. Sonny, I've been in a lot of flight test readiness reviews with you. I've seen you interacting with our employees. I saw you at the landing and recovery pre-brief meeting. Every time you're like, you have got to bring this ship back home so I can get into space with Josh and fly it again. So give us a recap of how you are feeling watching, Starliner return from space out here.
Yeah, it was really pretty unbelievable. It was picture perfect. Everything about it was just amazing, from seeing the tail as it flew in. Well, first of all, seeing the space station fly over, that was cool. Seeing the tail of the spacecraft fly over, see all of the pieces and parts start to come off, the forward heat shield, the base heat shield, see the parachutes open up. I mean, it was just picture perfect. We had a beautiful, amazing team all out here ready to support. Everybody was pumped. Everybody was cheering. It was spectacular. I mean, she's back. She's home.
Yeah. So, Sonny, dating back to Mercury, Gemini, and Apollo, all of the commanders of their space capsules have had the ability to name their spaceships. And so, on behalf of the Boeing company, we would really love for you to name that spaceship behind us. Any thoughts on a name?
Yeah, I have an idea. A little homage to other explorers and the ships that they rode on. I think we're going to call her Calypso.
Calypso. So let's think about this, right? Ship, Jacques Cousteau. Yeah, his ship, Calypso. And so you're an avid diver, right? So walk me through why you think that name is fitting.
Yeah, of course, I love the ocean. I love what the ocean means to this planet. We would not be this planet without the ocean. There's so much to discover in the ocean, and there's so much to discover in space. Just seemed like a natural marriage.
We love it. Thank you so much for being here, and we can't wait to get you on that vehicle flying to the International Space Station. And back to Brandy and Steve in Houston. Thanks, everyone.
The good ship Calypso. We have a name.
All right, so they've named the ship Calypso there, and it looks like
Calypso named by astronaut Sonny Williams, who
looks like things are progressing along. So I don't know how much longer I'm going to stay live here for, because we got to pretty much all the milestones that I wanted to see. Jason's talking about on the YouTube stream here that seeing all the stuff, all the cargo there, it looks like it was returned to sender. Apparently they sent the International Space Station all those presents on COD.
Senior Vice President of Space.
Anyway, so this is so Street Player wants to know.
Director Steve Stitch.
Kind of. I'm going to turn this down a little bit, but a Street Player over on Periscope wants to know, if we sent a man to the moon and back, why is this such an accomplishment? Well, so the reason it's an accomplishment is for a couple of reasons. One, this was privately developed by a private company, so it was not developed directly by NASA. This is also an entirely new platform. So even if you were to completely do the exact same type of mission again, but on a new platform, if you were to go to the moon and have a lunar lander and land on the moon, it would still be impressive to see a new platform, a new vehicle perform those operations. Because this is, we did all that stuff, but this is now completely different technology, a lot of automation built in, a lot of improvements and enhancements over the past, however many years that we've been designing crew capsules, starting with Mercury and Gemini and Apollo. I mean, all these have advancements going along the way. So even back in those days, like when you had the Gemini capsule and then they moved to the Apollo capsules, that was still an accomplishment to see the Apollo capsule do that. Even during the test flights when it would launch and return back to Earth, people could say, well, we did that. We did that on Gemini. Why is this an accomplishment? Well, it's a new platform. It's a brand new vehicle, new developments, new enhancements. We want to make sure that it can do what it's designed to do. This is going to be the first crew capsule or crew vehicle to get crew back to the International Space Station from U.S. soil since the space shuttle era. It's been 8 years now since the space shuttle was discontinued and retired. So we want to make sure we want to get that back, that capability back for the United States to be able to do this right here. So So, and we're really just, we're reviewing and celebrating this successful event. This particular event, the landing itself, seems pretty successful. Obviously, the mission itself had some bumps in the road trying to get to orbit, but knowing that the Atlas V performed perfectly to get it to where it dropped it off, knowing that the capsule, it didn't get to the intended orbit, but it was able to get to orbit. It just kind of, missed the cutoff there and used a little more fuel than it was supposed to. But we still had, the capability to get it to orbit, maneuver around, sustain a crew, environmental controls were good, and then bring it back to Earth is, that's all still an accomplishment. So, anyways, let's see, what else do we see? It says, well, I'm curious how long it will take them to ready it up again. So I believe this capsule is intended to be used for the first, not the next crewed mission. The CFT mission is going to use a different capsule. But I think the mission after that, which is what Sonny Williams' mission is going to use this, I think it's using this capsule again. So let's see. The intent is to reuse this capsule for the first crewed flight. I thought that they were going to use a different capsule for the first crewed flight for CFT. I think this capsule is for the first certified crew flight. So basically, we have this, which is the OFT, the uncrewed mission. Then we have CFT, which is the crewed flight test. That's basically their certification test. And then after CFT, the next flight after that, basically the second crewed mission, is the first certified crewed mission, meaning that they've certified that this vehicle is safe, because the next crewed mission, CFT, is still not certified as a safe vehicle for crew. So it's something that they're going to have to do. They're going to be still going through in basically test mode, even with crew on board. So I love this little access hatch that was down here that the guy was poking his head out of. It was kind of weird looking. It looked like a groundhog sticking out of his hole there. Let's see. To me, the broom sweeping is more interesting than Rosie. I know the guy with the broom is comical to me, because it seems like there's all these like super technical scientific things going on, and then there's just this dude with a broom sweeping the stairs. I don't know, that's kind of funny to me. Yeah, so I think we're pretty much going to get ready to wrap up here. Probably just a few more minutes, and then we're going to call it a day, because I don't think there's much more happening here.
And as we look at these live images from White Sands, New Mexico, where Starliner has touched down about an hour and 34 minutes ago. This mission started back in Florida on Friday, lifting off at 5:36 a.m. Central Time, going up and ran into the difficulty at orbit insertion, but managed to get into a safe, stable orbit, accomplished numerous mission objectives, and then position the spacecraft for a return home.
That's right, and it returned home right on time at 6:58 a.m. Central Time today. That was 5:58 a.m. Mountain Time there in the New Mexico desert. Some video there from the landing as the spacecraft was floating under its three main parachutes. That was 2 days, 1 hour, and 21 minutes into Starliner's first mission. And it floated down to a perfect landing, as you've been seeing, leaving the spacecraft in great shape. We're just about done with our coverage today, but we did want to give you one more reminder about the upcoming news conference that should be coming up at the top of the hour, 9 a.m. Central Time, with NASA Administrator Jim Bridenstine, Senior VP of Space and Launch for Boeing, Jim Chilton, and NASA's Commercial Crew Deputy Director, Steve Stitch. Again, that will be taking place at 9 a.m. Central Time here from the Johnson Space Center in Houston. Media who would like to participate can call Johnson Space Center's newsroom at 281-483-5111.
So at the conclusion of this first flight test of Starliner, thank you for joining us this morning. I'm Steve Seisloff from Boeing Communications.
I'm Brady Dean from NASA Public Affairs.
We'll see you next time.
All right, well, that's a good segue there, because I think I'm also going to wrap it up here. So we'll kind of leave it right here at the end of the Starliner, the landing here, entry, descent, and landing. And so far, I mean, this was a good morning for Boeing, at least to cap off the mission in a positive way. I know it didn't go exactly as they had hoped that it was going to go. Especially not being able to dock with the International Space Station, and of course, you know, the negative press that they're going to get from not being able to do that is going to be huge, or has been huge. But to be able to end this on a high note is still good, and I think the most important thing here is that had there been crew on board, that they would have been safe, and that's the number one thing. As priority number one is make sure that the crew is safe for this entire mission. And then obviously they got some work to do to try to fix those issues with whatever happened with that mission elapsed timer, or mission elapsed time timer that they've obviously had some issues with. Hopefully they've resolved it for today. Everything happened on time during entry, descent, and landing. So it's from my view, there was nothing that went wrong during that today, which has got to be reassuring for the astronauts as well, to know that they could get back safely. We had 3 good parachutes come out, landed right where it was supposed to. All the timing of drogues and the heat shields jettisoning from the craft all happened when they were supposed to. So that's great. So we had a good morning for Boeing here. Spacecraft came back, successfully landed in the White Sands Missile Range. Shortened mission here, but it seems like the next thing will be a crewed mission. Even though this was not ideal and was not perfect, it seems like they may have enough to move on to crewed missions next. I expect maybe there'll be at least a little bit of a delay from their plans before they go to crewed missions, but it seems like they, after a little bit of investigation and reassurance on the mission elapsed time issue, that they can probably go to crewed missions next, which is going to be interesting to find out who's going to get there first. SpaceX, Boeing, we don't know. SpaceX has still got to do their in-flight abort test before they can go to crewed flights. That in-flight abort test right now is scheduled for January 11th, so that's only in a couple weeks from now, less than a month. They're going to do the in-flight abort test. That is going to be a spectacular show because they're going to abort and pull the capsule away in flight right at max Q. The capsule will get pulled away, and they'll also use the flight termination system to basically the booster after they've pulled the capsule away with the abort system. So likely we're going to see video of all that, of the capsule, the booster just going into a million pieces there. Because that's going off of Cape Canaveral. SpaceX will likely have video of it, but even if they don't show the booster being, terminated, there's likely going to be a lot of amateur and professional people recording that as well. So I'm pretty confident we're going to see video of that entire event happening coming up on hopefully January 11th. And then crew flight for SpaceX is scheduled, I think right now for, I want to say March. But it's all dependent on the in-flight abort and whether they do that on time and whether it's successful. But Crew Dragon is expecting crew in March. Don't know when Boeing is going to expect crew, but theoretically, I could see a scenario where maybe they make March. But I don't know. It's going to be close. We're going to have to see who can get there first. Obviously, each company wants to be the first to do it so that they can put that little notch in their belt there. But we'll see. We'll see what they can. Who's gonna take the prize? Let's see. Can't wait to see that. This should be a good show. Great show. Thanks, Columbia on Periscope. Street Player says thank you. This is great. Thanks everybody for the kind words. Victoria says thanks. Glenn thinks that they should have a Dyson vacuum instead of the sweeping. Honestly, I love the sweeping. I think they got to stick with the sweeping because there's so much complicated stuff happening. And then you just got this guy that's like, just sweeping away here. Don't mind me, just keeping things clean and tidy. I just love that. I love the guy sweeping. All right, well, I think that's going to be it for me. It's been a long morning here, but I'm glad everybody took some time to hang out with us, watch the entry, descent, and landing for the Boeing CST-100 Starliner on its orbital flight test. Did make it to orbit. A couple of issues along the way, so it wasn't perfect, but they did it. They've completed the mission, and now it's hopefully on to crewed flight. More news to come. So if you want to check that out or see, I'll probably tweet some stuff out as well this morning about the flight as well. So make sure you're following along on the Twitter channel. Make sure you subscribe to the YouTube channel. Throw us a thumbs up if you like this kind of content. It lets me know that you're interested and you're having just as much fun as I am. Or if you're watching on Periscope, send some hearts over. All that kind of stuff lets me know that you guys like this kind of stuff, and we keep doing it. So that's it. All right. Well, we're gonna call it a day. So Merry Christmas to everybody. If that's your thing, Happy Holidays. If it's not, or even if it is, whatever you celebrate, hopefully the rest of this year, and you have a good rest of 2019 for those few days that we have left. And the next thing we'll see you for is probably going to be in 2020. So if I don't see you guys, Merry Christmas, Happy Holidays, Happy New Year, all that sorts of thing. And thanks for joining us today. My name's Tori. This is Overlook Horizon. We'll see you guys all on the next video. Goodbye, everybody. See ya.